Welcome to Just Energy Radio with your host, naturopath and medical intuitive, Dr. Rita Louise. We have learned from Einstein's theory that matter and energy are one. Physicists believe that all systems in nature have their own particular way of vibrating. From the swinging of a pendulum to the waves of the ocean to the light that brightens the sky each day, each of these oscillates at its own unique rate. The same holds true for every thought, feeling, event, or word we speak. Each has its own frequency or rate of vibration. What many of us don't realize is when we take everything in our universe down to its simplest form, it is all just energy. Join Dr. Rita Louise on a journey through time and space where past, present, and future collide. Today, what you believe may be called into question. What we want to know is, who made up the rules? Be brave and step outside the box. We are about to turn our world upside down and venture into the unknown. Hold on. We are departing our own beliefs and entering alternative realms. Enjoy the possibilities.
Hello and welcome to Just Energy Radio. I'm Dr. Rita Louise, and I want to wish you all a happy Valentine's Day, whether you are with someone special or not. So today we're going to have a really cool show. In the first hour, we're going to be talking to Eva Herr about consciousness. And in the second hour, a good and long-standing friend of mine, Tracy Brown, about loving yourself, loving others. How cool is that? It's Valentine's Day. Valentine's Day. I hope you got like good stuff. And actually, I just want to do a shout out to my husband because not only is it Valentine's Day for us, it's also our anniversary. And babe, I love you. Anyway, and if you're an LSI employee and you're hearing me say this, you better tell him that you heard me saying that on air directly to him and give him a high five and mess up his hair. Anyway, they understand. Anyway, Just Energy Radio is brought to you by soulhealer.com. Are you looking for love and just not finding it? Well, go to my website, soulhealer.com, and find out about all of the services I offer that can help you find that man or woman of your dream. And there are a number of ways that you can be kept informed of who's coming on to Just Energy Radio. One is you can go to our webpage and sign up for our weekly newsletter. That's www.justenergyradio.com. Or you can go to Facebook and like us on Facebook. That's Just Energy Radio on Facebook. And if you've missed an episode of the show, please do check out the archives. One, you can listen to them here on Inception Radio Network, the live show, or catch up on the archives. Actually, if you download the iPhone or smartphone app, you can listen right on your phone in your car as you're driving around. I think that's totally cool, and it works really good. You can go to the Just Energy Radio webpage where we have over 6 years worth of archives. Or, we just have so many ways you can listen to these shows. You can go and check out our YouTube channel. That's Just Energy Radio on YouTube, where we have almost 2 years worth of archives of all the shows here from Just Energy Radio. Let's see. What else do I need to announce before we bring Eva on? Oh, one other announcement. In June, if you haven't heard this before, you're hearing it now. In June, myself and Brian Forrester, who, if you've watched Ancient Aliens, he's been on a number of times, we are organizing a tour to Peru. We're going to go to a number of the major sites there, and it's going to be kind of a research project, bringing in science and intuition. And so one of the things that we're going to be doing is checking in and looking for vortexes and feeling the rocks and looking for ancestral spirits that are on the sites, because we want to communicate with them. We want to communicate with the sites. Why did they build them? What was their significance? How long ago were they made? Were they made by humans, as in mankind? Were they built by giants? Was it really a group of extraterrestrials that came down and built these magnificent megalithic sites that we still can't figure out how they were built today. You know, one of the other things that we're going to get to do is we're going to get to interact with some of those elongated heads and kind of check out their energy. Because, you know, if you've ever done ghost hunting or are interested in ghost hunting, you know, usually you don't even have a body to interact with, but we're going to have these, you know, elongated skulls. We're going to go to a cemetery. There's all kinds of really cool stuff. So if it's something you're interested in and would like to get more information, go to my webpage, www.soulhealer.com. There's a big banner on the top. Actually, it's on the Just Energy Radio webpage. Click through. We'll give you information about the tour. They told me the pricing information is going to be there today. I don't know about that part, but check it out. Send an inquiry so you can get on the list so that when they get all that together, they can get back to you about it. Whew. Well, while I'm, you know, saying stuff, and don't forget, you can still get copies of my new book, Man-Made, The Chronicles of Our Extraterrestrial Gods. It's available on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, or on my webpage, which, of course, if you get it from me, it comes autographed, which is priceless. Okay, I'm done. Let me tell you about our first guest, which is Eva Herr. Eva is a walking encyclopedia when it comes to alternative medicine and the science of consciousness. She is considered by many to be one of the world's luminaries regarding the topics of the science of consciousness and holistic healthcare supplements, anti-aging, and other preventative healthcare issues. Eva is the author of Agape, The Intent of the Soul, and the host of the weekly radio talk show program, Infinite Consciousness, on BBS Radio. So from EvaHerr.com, the author of Consciousness, Eva Herr. Hi, Eva. How are you?
Hi, Rita. Thanks for having me. I would like to add one more thing so I don't get slapped by my producer. I have a second radio show on a second network called The Eva Herr Show on Revealing Talk Radio. Not that he would slap me. He really wouldn't, but he would be.
Well, you know, it could be our secret.
He would have his feelings hurt. So thanks for having me.
Well, you know, Eva, I have known of you for years. And I just was like, wait a minute.
You were on my show years ago.
Okay, but...
You were on my show years ago.
Yeah. But I mean, I was thinking to myself, because somebody... And I'm trying to think who it was. I think Cynthia Larson said, you know, you need to have Eva on your show. And I'm thinking, why hasn't she been on the show? I mean, it was just kind of like a, duh, that was dumb. But anyway, but you're here now. And you have a new book.
Thank you.
And so it's good.
Yeah, it's a really exciting book, I think. I don't think there's anything else out there like it. And I probably, if you ask me, being intuitive and being spiritual like you are, I'll probably say that this book is probably the reason that I was put here. The Agape book, you know, I thought that when it came in that it was going to, you know, I was so excited. You know how you are in your first book. This is a book that's going to change the world. That's what I thought. But it was not. It was just my story. This book, if it's read, will change the world. It's because it's a book of interviews of scientists. And many of the scientists didn't realize that they were all not on the same page, even though they've been researched. Like Bill Tiller said to me, oh my God, when he read his chapter, he first called me and said, I love it. It's the most important book I've ever read. And a week later he called me back and said, I hate it. And I said, why? And why, Bill? And he said, because everybody doesn't say what I say. And I said, well, don't you think that's the important thing about the book? And he went, let me think about it. So he called me back a week later, and he said, you know, I think he said 86, maybe 83, I don't remember, 83 years old. And I thought I was done until I read your book. And he said, I've known Dean Radin and worked with Dean Radin for 30 years, and I never knew that that's the way he defined consciousness. And it's a problem, because if we're all talking about this thing, and yet we don't even have a meeting of the minds about what we're talking about, it makes a big difference. And we'll never have a quantum leap in science. We'll never make the scales tip to the critical mass in the way that we want it to tip if we're not all on the same page about what we're talking about. I don't know if that makes sense, but if you read it, then you'll know.
You know, I mean, it does make sense. But then, I'm going to throw in kind of a little devil's advocate angle. If everybody was pursuing the same thing, then we maybe wouldn't have as big and broad of a brushstroke that you tend to achieve in your book, because, we look out at the world with our, through our eyes, and these are our internal questions that we're trying to solve. And so taken as a whole, I think you get a bigger picture because everyone is looking to solve their questions, not necessarily everybody trying to solve the same question.
Well, it's not about people being on different pages. Here's what I'm trying to get across. When the first question in all the chapters, and this is a book for your listening audience, it's 11 chapters of 11 interviews with 11 of the top scientists in the world that's studying consciousness. There might be one philosophist, Christian de Quincey, I can't think of any, and maybe a couple engineers, but it's science. And my first question to all of them was, what is your definition of consciousness? And they would say what it is. Well, it would be anywhere from the ground of all being, opposite of being in a coma, opposite of being in a sleep, aware that you're aware that you're aware, the irreducible unit, the 0-point field, and it goes on and on. So it doesn't, it's appropriate and marvelous and awe-inspiring that each of the people do pursue their own fields because they're important. But the problem is, imagine that all of them, and this has really happened, all of them go into a meeting, say there are 30 of them, and they go into a meeting at the physics consciousness meeting, and they all sit down at a table talking about the model of physical reality. And they use this word consciousness. Well, they're all talking about something different. And they don't know that they're talking about something different, so they get into a fight. And they slam their chairs up and throw their papers down and leave. Well, if they just say, hey, I'm talking about, we need a linguist here, so that we can say, okay, I'm talking about definition A, or I'm talking about definition B, or I'm talking about definition C. And many of them don't even, like Henry Stapp and Bill Tiller live in this, Bill was the chairman of the physics department at Stanford. Henry Stapp is I can't think of the name of that magnificent laboratory out there, that physics lab in California. But Henry runs it, and people say that Henry will get a Nobel Prize for his work in consciousness one day. Well, there's all this work out there, and they live in the same state, right down the road from each other at one time, didn't even know each other existed. Don't you think that's important? They don't know about each other's work. And it's they need to be able to say, okay, your work is great and my work is great, and we can collaborate, but we just need to define what it is that we're saying. I don't know if that makes sense. And I have the flu. I have a scratchy throat, so if I sound funny, that's why. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
So it's just about communication. But the important thing is, what did I find out that was important for our everyday lives in those interviews, in my perspective?
Well, actually, where I would like to start, you're talking about everybody has a different definition of consciousness. So from what you have read, have you taken all of their ideas of consciousness and kind of come up with your own definition of what consciousness is? Because if that's what we're going to talk about, then I guess it would be good to have a definition of it.
You're absolutely right. And I will use that definition in different ways at different times, and when I do change the meaning of it, I'll say, no, by the way, in this sentence or in this description, I mean this when I say consciousness. Because it's all of those things. It's all of everything that everybody said. It's just they didn't know that they didn't know what they were talking about. That's
I'm just going to throw in one little side note. When you said that, I know one of the people you interviewed was Amit Goswami, who's like one of my favorite people on the entire planet. And, and one of the things he talks about is, the whole process of evolution is consciousness based, not necessarily our consciousness, but the consciousness of the universe. And I think it's interesting, because when we think of God, there are all of these aspects of God that we can't necessarily just pick one and say, this is God. And it almost sounds similar in your describing consciousness, where you'll say, well, this is this aspect of consciousness, and this is this aspect of consciousness. In the same way we would say, well, this is this aspect of God.
Yeah, and interestingly enough that you pick Amit, because he's the one that brought it to my attention. When I started doing these interviews I started in 2005, and I probably interviewed 100 people or more. And years ago, gosh, it's probably been 10 years ago, when I sent him the very first draft and said, what do you think about this idea that I have for a book? And he called me, literally, as soon as he got it, he called me and said, Eva, I'm devastated. I had no idea we had this problem. We have to fix it. We will never have a quantum leap if we don't fix this problem. So he's the one that started it. He's the one that really, supported me and gave me the what's the word? The strength to do it. Because who am I? I'm a housewife. I don't have a degree in anything, and I just had an enlightenment experience years ago, and when that happened, I knew stuff. So who am I to say anything about what anything is? And to have Bill and Amit and all these people to support me, it gave me the courage to do it. It took courage. I have to tell you, it took a lot of courage. For me to tell scientists, hey, there's some things you need to know that you don't know. Imagine how I felt. I'm a housewife telling these scientists with multiple PhDs that there's something that they're missing. It took guts. So
yeah, but sometimes, at least in my experience, just because you have all these degrees doesn't mean that your focus doesn't get fixated or dogmatized or, all right, now granted, many of the people that you interviewed, I didn't know everyone in the book, but I knew a lot of them, are people that I would consider individuals that tend to step outside the box.
Yeah.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that, when it's somebody else, it's like you're having a fresh set of eyes look on it.
Yeah, and one thing that I found out when I found out that many of these people don't even know each other and don't even know that the work of this other person exists. And these people, like some of them, like Henry, may be nominated for a Nobel Prize, and people don't even know that he exists. And he doesn't even know they exist. These scientists, they're so brilliant, they lock themselves in these little rooms and they do their research, and that's all that they know. So it's not that they're wrong, and that's their fear, is that, who wants to be at the level that those people are and come out and have to say, I was wrong about that. And that's what ego gets in the way. Instead, they need to be going, guess what? I just learned that there's a next step to what I was doing, that it's a problem, and a lot of them have trouble doing that. And so I hope that this book will help bridge the gap between science, between scientists themselves, between a religion to promote world peace, and between to common humanity, to prove to humanity that we are powerful spiritual beings. Quantum mechanics, and I loved your introduction. If I could write it down, I would probably post it on my Facebook. I love the way that you worded that. Quantum mechanics has proven, it's not a guess anymore. They have proven that there is no matter on the quantum level. What does that mean? People don't get that. What does that mean? It means that if there's no matter on the quantum level, it looks like the sea, for example, or the air. There's nothing separating us from anything else. If there's no matter. If there are no roadblocks in the road, then there are nothing separating any of the roads. There's only one road. We're all one thing, and it's a proven fact in science. Now, people say to me all the time, I gave my little boy's teacher one of my books He's in the 6th grade last week, or right before Christmas. And the teacher said to me last week, that's way over my head, and I don't believe in that stuff anyway. And I said, do you believe that 2 + 2 is 4? And he went, well, of course I do. And I said, well, then you don't have any choice but to believe that because it's a proven fact. You know, we can manipulate reality. We don't have complete free will, but we have free will to try. And that's an important thing for people to know. And then it's important to know what is that thing that allows you to change your life. And it doesn't mean that, you know, the problem with The Secret and what the belief was the science was wrong. You can't just think, and a Cadillac drop in your front yard.
You can't.
You know,
dang.
You know, you have the potential. You have the potential to try, but if it doesn't, there's where your free will lies. To say okay.
You know, I think that The Secret, you know, kind of opened the door, but I agree with you. I think that their methodology was short-sighted, you know, and they didn't really give the whole picture, you know, and I don't know if it's because they didn't know the whole picture or if it got too complicated and too bogged down in metaphysical terms and talking about energy that they just weren't able to document it. I don't know. I couldn't quite figure that one out. I like the tape better than the movie, personally.
I think they gave what they knew at the time, you know, and they certainly opened the door. But then it caused people to get real excited and run out and try that, and nothing happened, so they gave up. And that's what I want to do with this book, to prove to them science has proven that if you do this, these results can happen for your life. And the results being teaches you how to accept what is, teaches you how to put the puzzle pieces together that you are manifesting, you know, teaches you how to better your health. It teaches you all of those things just by reading what the people have to say, because then you can't deny anymore that it's not real. So where would you like to go? Or else I'll blabber on. Sorry.
You know, I think it's interesting. You know, I've read Lynn McTaggart's work, you know, The Intention Experiment and some of the other stuff that she's done, which was just, to me, fascinating. Because, well, I mean, I was familiar with Bill Tiller's work, you know, because he really works in that area as well. Maybe you could share some of the experimentation that has been going on. I mean, because what we're talking about is consciousness and the use of consciousness, and just I'm kind of paraphrasing here for you, through the use of intention to create things, you know, in the physical world to manipulate the direction our life is taking, I guess.
Okay.
You know, but could you provide maybe some examples of experiments and tests where they actually showed that there was a correlation between maybe what we were thinking and how things manifested in the physical world?
Yes. And remember, I'm just a woman. I'm a journalist. So I'm just relating the information that I got from my interviews, okay? So I don't want people to think that I did this because I had nothing to do with it. I wish I did, but I didn't. Let's start with Brenda Dunn, Robert John and Brenda Dunn. Robert John is the Dean Emeritus of the Engineering Department at Princeton, and Brenda is his right arm. And they started the Princeton Pear Lab, Princeton's Engineering and Anomalies Research Lab. And it was started all by one of Bob's students doing their thesis, and they came to him with this project that they had in mind, and he was skeptical at first, but he decided to do it. And so what they did was they put up a pegboard on the wall. And you can see this. The lab closed a couple of years, but they're still very active. You can sign up and get emails from Brenda Dunn, and they have like little webinar things that they do or teleconference things they do where you can participate. It's really neat. But they put up a pegboard on the wall, and they put the pegs in a bell-shaped curve. And then they put a piece of plexiglass in the front of that pegboard. And then they would drop ping pong balls in, and a lot of them, like 10,000 ping pong balls. And kind of like the lottery thing. And they would have somebody sit in front of it, just one person. It didn't require a lot of people. And they would have that person meditate and get into an altered state, like low theta, high delta maybe. And they would have that person meditate that all the balls would fall to the left. And that's exactly what would happen. Now, it might be that there would be such a small amount of balls that it would be a subtle effect, which would be logical because energy is subtle. Energy medicine is subtle. You know, our bodies are subtle energy machines, electromagnetic subtle energy. And so because they would have to put all of this data into a computer, it might have 10 balls more to the left. It wouldn't be all of them. It'd be like 10 balls. And the next time it might be 5 balls. The next time it might be 20 balls. So it was slow adding up, but over a period of time, it was without a doubt clear evidence that mind can manipulate reality. Every single time they would have a person do that, there would be more balls on the left than on the right. You know, and in everyday world, the balls would hit that bell-shaped curve and they would split up pretty evenly. And so that was one experiment. And then, but there a lot of people gave them flack about that because they said, well, we can't reproduce it. Well, that's true. They can't reproduce it because to reproduce it, because mind is doing it, then they have to, when they do the experiment, they have to have somebody, the person that's meditating, to be able to reach that altered state. So, like Emoto's work with water, a lot of people gave him flack because it couldn't be reproduced. Well, they're not in the same state of consciousness that he is, so they're not going to get the same results. Another set of experiments was Bill Tiller's, where he took this water, and he got a water company to donate the water so that there wasn't any controversy about the source of the water being tainted. And he sent it to labs all over the world, 10 or 11 of them, I think, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember. It's been a while. And then he built this little machine called an intention carrier. And Bill, his wife, and Norm Shealy and his wife meditated, and they placed an intention. I think he did this with what he calls magnetic monopoles, which science says doesn't exist. And I'm not sure if that's how he built this machine, but I'm pretty sure that's what he said. Anyway, so they meditated, they get into this altered state, and they place an intention in this box that all of this water, in those two subgroups, A and B, all the water, say, in group B, would increase 1 point pH. And as you know, a change in pH by 1 point is a very big deal, you know, in the water, because we are, 70-something% water. And it happened. Not only that, but it affected things for like a 30-mile radius over the next 3 days, which they were not expecting. And then they did another one where they told the pH to go down 1 point. And in 3 days seems to be the magic time period. Within 3 days, that happened. Then they did another experiment where they, Bill had fruit fly larvae. And he obviously had 2 petri dishes. And 1 petri dish he intended, I left this out. They sent each company, each laboratory that was trying to reproduce that test with the water, one of these intention carriers. And all you do is plug it in and turn it on. And it happened. So that carrier carried thought. It's like a little box that stored magic, you know. It carried the thought, and they turned it on, and the thought came out, like Pandora's box almost. So the other one was they had fruit fly larvae, and they accelerated the growth rate of this one group of fruit fly larvae by 25%. The other group did nothing, just grew at their average rate. So, you know, Dean Radin told me, and I can't remember, I think he said this is Pittsburgh, I can't remember. They did a peace prayer, during one of the bowl games, because every single time this city had a bowl game, their crime rate would increase some ridiculous number, like 50% or something, like maybe more, I don't remember, but a lot. And so they did they prayed and prayed for peace when they did this. And then they watched this random event generator, because when it gets non-random, thought becomes very cohesive, and whatever you're trying to accomplish, the prayer or the intention, whatever you want to call it, is more likely to happen. Well, when they did that, crime in that city went down 25% instead of going up to 30 or 50 or 75, whatever it was. I don't remember. That's amazing. And now they have these things planted all over the world, and you can find them at Noorsphere, Noorsphere. Roger Nelson runs that site, and it's the site, you have to it's not very user-friendly, this page, but if you click enough, you'll find the page where you can see where these things are planted. Then you can find another one where you can see the activity of them, and they'll make a gong or they'll make a ding. And anytime you hear those noises, you'll know that consciousness is cohesive in that place. So they know when the random event generators start getting more ones than zeros or more zeros than ones in that part of the world, that something's about to happen. They don't know what it is, but they know something's about to happen. And sure enough, usually within 3 days, that seems to be the magic number, something will happen. All of the major world events, they've been seen on the random event generators, but just no one knew what they were going to be. They just knew something was going to happen.
All right, can I just interrupt you right there? Because that's really interesting.
Yes.
And so is what they're picking up like an energy imprint from us? You know, like there's a disturbance in the force, and, you know, and we're being affected, and now this machine is being affected. How did that work? Do you know?
I think the answer to your question, yes. It's the mass consciousness becoming cohesive. You know what they say, when two or more gather, things happen. So it's like the mind knows, big mind, not your little everyday running mind, knows something. Global consciousness knows something's about to happen. Doesn't know what, but because of quantum entanglement, everybody's connected, so everybody knows about it. And even though they don't know about it, you know, Dean Radin's proven many times, if you listen to his interviews or read his work, all of his experiments that he's done with putting people in 2 different rooms and letting them watch these pictures and putting them up to EEGs or whatever it is he puts them up to, that they get it. Even though they're not together, they get it. And there's a tool, actually, that you can use. I have one here at my house. It's a personal random event generator, and it's the form in a lamp. You can find it at Psyleron, Psyleron. And what this lamp does, it's actually so beautiful. It's small. It's about maybe 16, a foot and a half tall, something like that. And it looks like a piece of art, actually. And it rotates through the electromagnetic spectrum, but there's no light bulb in it. I really don't know how it works, but it goes through all the colors of the rainbow, and when it stops and gets stuck on one color, and somehow, they don't know how yet, it knows that it belongs to you, and so it attaches to you somehow, probably through what Bill said, magnetic monopoles, which the world says doesn't exist. But mine stays on pretty much the same colors, which is this pink fuchsia color and then this aquamarine kind of color. Between pink and purple, I don't know how to describe it. We suspect, and we had private conversations about this. You won't find it on the air, I don't believe. We suspect that wherever this lamp tends to stop on you will tell you how high or deep. There's no language to say this. How cohesive your thoughts are. because purple is the highest vibrating color on the, and red is the lowest. So wherever it tends to stick, then that kind of lets you know where you are. So it gives you feedback to, first of all, are you cohesive? That's where your creativity state is. If you want to try to change, make physical things come into your life, then you absolutely must be cohesive. And if you don't know when you're cohesive or not, the best way I can describe it is when I was in elementary school, we didn't have air conditioning, and after lunch we would all come back into our class and we'd kind of be full and sitting there staring out the window in the summertime and hot. And you kind of have this feeling of floaty, out-of-body feeling. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
That's the state. But this lamp will do it for you. So, and you can also play with it. Like you can get a group of people together and focus and get it to go to a certain color. So when you get it to do that, when it minds you, so to speak, then you know that you're in a state of creativity. I hope that makes sense.
I mean, that makes sense, but I'm thinking, all right, this lamp's going to like organize my stuff so that I can be in the groove and be more creative. I mean, from a cognitive level, it's like...
It doesn't organize, it just measures, so to speak.
Oh, okay, so it lets me... So it's kind of almost like a biofeedback thing.
Yeah.
Where it's giving you...
Online.
Huh?
Look at it online sometimes so you'll have an idea what I'm talking about. It's cheap. Well, it's only about $100, and it's worth it. I mean, it's beautiful to look at. It's a great party thing, but I use it to get in my meditative state and do the things I want to do.
And so basically, if you walk by and the thing like blows up or turns black, you have really bad mojo and you should just stay home and not get in your car because something's going to happen.
Well, it won't go into those colors. What it will do will be non-random. It will just constantly rotate through all the colors of the rainbow. It'll just constantly rotate. You remember those round things that we had? I don't know how old you are, but I'm 53. When I was a little kid, there were these round lights that people would set under their Christmas trees that would turn and rotate
had
colors.
Like 3 or 4 colors and
yeah. It's kind of like that. It doesn't look like that, and it doesn't work like that, but it rotates like that. And it's the equivalent, stopping on one color is the equivalent of being not, ones and binary. It's being binary. It's the equivalent of saying, okay, there's more ones and zeros. So it's just a tool. Mm-hmm. But it's a great tool to help you, learn how to do what you're really trying to do.
So there are those that would say that, what you're suggesting, even through the experimentation that's been going on, isn't necessarily scientific. So what do you have to say back to them about that?
I say, okay. That's what I say. Consciousness is in gradients. We know that. And if that's what you believe, even though there's hard scientific evidence, then that's what you're supposed to believe. You'll get there. I won't say this to them. I'll simply say, okay. But they'll get there one day. Everybody goes through growth. And if you've already, and you will probably understand this, and your listeners, if you have already gone, we've been 5, but they've not been 55. So you can't argue with them because they know everything like a teenager. So you just go, okay. And you leave it because you can't change them.
Oh, that just makes me laugh. Okay, let's just move along. We're talking about intentions, and I'd like to kind of talk about the quality of intentions. So are all intentions alike? Or can we want something and then have it manifest? Or do these intentions have to come from, like somewhere deep inside within us? Or as you're saying, where I forget the word you just used, where our energy is more ingrained or in tuned or in alignment, so our light's working good. I forget the word you put with that.
Cohesive.
Cohesive. so that our energy, or do we have to be more cohesive? But I'll go back to the original question. Are all intentions alike?
That's a good question. And I got cohesive from heart math, by the way. Are you familiar with heart math?
I mean, I've heard of it. I've never done it.
Get them on your show. Rella McCrady's the best. He's great. So are everybody in my book. You should have every one of those people on your show. They're so great. And they're so willing to do it. But anyway, back to your question. That's a really good point. There's two things, and from my perspective, and from all of these people's perspective, and that's big mind and little mind. What's the difference? Little mind, if you will think a thought right now. Think, I don't know, I need to go to the grocery store and buy whatever. You will find that it runs horizontally across your forehead. When you get something from big mind or God or consciousness, whatever you want to call it, in this time, when I say consciousness, I mean the irreducible of an atom, the non-dual state, or God, whatever, however you like to define it. It'll come in straight down and hit you in the top of the middle of the head like an idea. Does that make sense?
I'm totally tracking with you.
Okay. So you hear it, but you hear it in a silent voice. So that's not an intention. That is you connecting with who you really are. Now, when you're doing intentions, I wrote an article, which I will be glad to, if I can find it, because I'm redoing my webpage, so I've got to go, and all these things are off, but just about this topic, and I'll be glad to email it to you, and you can put it on your page for your listeners, about just how do you intend to get what it is you want. If you intend, I want this, I want that, I want this, and you spend all your time thinking about this thing that you want, then consciousness is, and in this phrase I mean God or irreducible unit, or I don't want to step on toes,
we do here all the time. So
that consciousness doesn't know verbs. It knows nouns. So if you pray, I want this, I want that, I want this, I want that, then you get the desire of just that, the desire of want for that thing. If you want, if you don't like black horses, so you're constantly thinking, I hate black horses, I never want a black horse, please don't give me a black horse, God, then you're going to manifest a black horse in your life, but it may be it may come into you in the form of a black Ford Mustang with a lot of horsepower that runs into your car. So if you want something, if it's within your field of creativity, because you also have to, there's one thing when people are talking about free will, and that's where intention couples with free will. You came here for a reason, and some things you're just not meant to have, because without those things, or with those things, whichever the case may be, you won't learn the lesson that you came here to learn, because it's a scientific fact that we are spiritual beings having a physical experience, not the other way around. So you got to focus and visualize and feel that thing that you want. And you need to feel it and want it for a good reason, because when you're trying to manifest, if you don't have all, consciousness gets every single little thought that goes through your mind, your little mind. And all those things manifest, especially when you get into that space of cohesiveness. So you got to be really careful, because if you don't do it with the right intention, or you'll know if it's the right intention, because would you want somebody to think that thing about you? If you wouldn't, then you know that the intention's not right. Secondly, when you're trying to manifest something, you got to be really clear about it, like put in the longitude and latitude. Dean Radin told me a story one time, and it's a good one. He said, imagine that there are 100 people around a pond, and the goal is to get all of the water out of the pond. So everybody picks up a rock, and they're going to throw it in, try to get the water out. And every rock represents an intention, or a thought, or a prayer, whatever you want to call it. Well, every rock has to be the exact same size. It's got to be the exact same weight. And it's got to be thrown with the exact same velocity, and velocity, and the exact same, exact same amount of I don't know the word, force. Yes, thank you. And if that happens, if everybody does it exactly right, all the water will come out of the pond. If they don't, then it's just going to create a bunch of splashes. So I tell people all the time, when you pray, please stop praying for 30 minutes for this and that and this and that and this and that, because it's like throwing a bunch of rocks out there on the pond and they're just splashing. It's not going to happen. It's not even going to, the potential is not going to be there for it to happen. You got to be cohesive. And if you want to be well, then your prayer shouldn't be 30 minutes. Let me please heal this or that or this. You got to say, I'm whole and I'm well. The most direct, cohesive, to the point prayer that you can make.
But you're talking about it from a higher place. You're not talking about it from being in the disease. You're talking about it from being outside it, above it. I mean, let me just throw out an example. Since it's Valentine's Day, and we're, I want to kind of move, because we're getting a little close on time, spend a couple of seconds talking about relationships since it's Valentine's Day. Even though I'd rather talk about health and healing, but, anyway, I'm keeping in the spirit. But I had a client and, she was working on law of attraction, was doing really good. And so finally she told me, because she was getting very frustrated because it wasn't working. And she goes, well, I'm being very specific. And basically what she wanted was to manifest having a relationship with this one specific football player. Period. Yeah. And it was like, well...
That's what I have to say.
Okay. What do you do with that?
Nothing.
I understand about being specific, and I try to say, that's really not how it works. You need to put out that you're going to create, a loving, caring relationship, blah, blah, blah. She's like, but I want this man. I'm like, I don't even know if he's married.
If it's not within her field of possibilities and consciousness, it's not going to happen. And as long as she's doing that, I was telling my son just today, if you want something else, whether it's a woman or a job or whatever it is, or some more clothes, if your closet's full of clothes, you have to get rid of some of them to get some new clothes to put them in. So she's closing the door on anything by doing that.
But and kind of taking it to the next step, people that are asking for, I want $1 million. I want a Rolls Royce. It's like, well, let me ask you this. Because there is what is within our potential that you're talking about. But then there's also the other factor that might jump in, which is our own doubts and negative thoughts. What if it's in our potential to have $1 million? All right, this is the 20th century, $1 trillion. So what if it's in our potential to have $1 trillion, but it's more we don't believe we can have it? Then what happens?
I guess you won't have it. Or if you do have it, it'll turn into something terrible. There's actually, how much time do we have? 10 minutes?
Yeah.
Or 8 minutes? 10 minutes?
9, 10, yeah.
Okay. I have a quick story I'll try to tell you, but there's something important I want to talk about before we get through about the noise in the ear, okay?
Okay.
So don't let me forget that. There's a story about a man, and my friend swears the story's true. I do not know. But allegedly it happened here in Atlanta. My friend knows this guy. Don't know. But the guy... he was obsessed with the Silver Clouds Rolls Royce. He looked at every magazine. He read every ad in the newspaper every single week. He made visualization charts where he visualized, put pictures up and looked at them and meditated on them because he wanted one so badly. He couldn't afford it. So one day he sees in the newspaper Silver Clouds Rolls Royce for $50. And so he calls up the woman and he says, okay, I want to come. Is it real? And she said, yeah. Is there anything wrong with it? Because he's imagining, that it's been stripped down or whatever. She goes, nope, it's perfect. It's beautiful. Not a scratch on it. Drives fine. He went, okay, well, I'm coming to get it. So he goes over there very apprehensively, and she takes him to the garage, and there it is, this beautiful Silver Clouds Rolls Royce in perfect condition. So he buys it. And he said, why did you sell this for $50? And she said, well, my husband left me for a secretary, and he took care of me financially, but he left and took her to our condo in Florida, and the only thing he asked me to do was sell his car and send him a check. So the guy got the Silver Clouds Rolls Royce for $50, but he forgot to manifest the money to pay for the insurance, the money to pay for the tag, the money to pay for the maintenance and the tires. So he had a Silver Clouds Rolls Royce that he could do nothing with.
Oops.
So so you gotta really think about what it is that you're manifesting, just in case you do get it. And now I want to talk about the sound in the ears. Do you, and I'm saying this to your listeners, hear a high-pitched sound in your ears? And it may be all the time, or it may be start in one ear or the other for just a few minutes, and then it may quit. Usually it's at night when you notice it in the bed. But do you, Rita?
Not very often.
It's either yes
every
or
so
no
often.
Binary. Okay.
I mean, I would say, maybe once every 6 months, maybe.
Well, think about it. I bet you $1 it's more than that. Because and the answer is yes or no, because we're binary beings. You know that. It's yes or no, ones or zeros. And one thing that I learned, I started getting this sound, the more I learned, went inside and sat in silence and had the experience I had. I got this sound all the time. It like to drove me crazy for a while. People would say it's tinnitus, but it's not. So anytime I hear of somebody that has this sound, the first thing I know is, this person's on a really serious spiritual path. I bet they've had some dark nights of the soul. And the second thing it tells me is that they probably need magnesium, because magnesium is highly flammable, and when you become a serious spiritual seeker, your resonance speeds up. And every time a neuron fires, it burns up more energy than it did before. And magnesium is that thing, like those little sparklers that kids play with?
Uh-huh.
That's magnesium. So the faster your field vibrates, the more magnesium that you burn up. And so the more that sound is the physical side effect of not having enough magnesium.
Well,
But
see, and
it's
I
also,
take magnesium every day.
Well, maybe that's why you don't have it a lot. But you will probably, I wouldn't be surprised if you didn't get it more. So I talked to Ervin Laszlo about this one day, and he said, you know what it is? He said, I have it too, Eva. I said, what is it? He said, it's B flat. I said, well, what's important about that, Ervin? And he said, do you know who Ervin Laszlo is?
No.
You know him?
Mm-mm.
Oh, well, let me say, he's an amazing man. He's been nominated for 2 Nobel Peace Prizes. He's probably the greatest philosopher, system analyst alive in the world today. And you're one of the first to hear it, but he and a small group of people have funding to start the women's movement to change the world. I just happen to be lucky enough to somehow be involved with that. Details will be forthcoming. It's a very new idea. It's only happened in the last 2 or 3 weeks since the Connecticut bombing, that things are happening. Funds are in place. There's a 3-year projected plan, a business plan. So things are happening. Expect to hear from me about that. But anyway, so he said B flat is the sound of silence and hertz. It's also the sound that comes from black holes. It's the frequency of manifestation, Eva. So whenever you hear that sound, if you are in that altered state of mind where your creativity is at its greatest, that's where you're most likely to manifest those things that you want. So when you hear that sound, audience, be careful what it is that you're thinking. Or when you hear that sound, stop what you're doing and go think about what it is that you really want in your life, because it's the frequency of manifestation. It was the sound that existed in the universe before the Big Bang. If you've ever been out in the woods when there's nothing but silence, and it's so silent that the woods are like screaming, this real high-pitched screaming noise, that's it. So that's what I have to say. Please go to my website. It's evaherr.com. Check out my book, my new book, Consciousness, Bridging the Gap Between Conventional Science and the New Science of Quantum Mechanics. Please don't be scared by the title. It's really not, there are no numbers in there. And my first book, Agape, The Intent of the Soul. And go to my Facebook page, The Eva Herr Show. And please like it and friend me so you can keep up with this project that we're about to do to change the world, especially if you're a woman. Great things are about to happen.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely one of the things about this book. I mean, I love the concept of physics, except when you try to read a physics book, it's like whoosh. You know, and I always joke around about the half-dead cat, you know, and the little cardboard, you know, the light splitting into two and okay, too heavy, you know, and this is not written that way. This is written in like regular English for regular people.
That's what I tried to do. You know, I'm just a housewife. I have a high school education, a little bit of college. I'm a certified paralegal. That's all. You know, so I tried to write it so that the average person...
how did you get into this whole field in the first place? I mean, because you've been around. I mean, you can't be all that much housewifey because, I mean, I've known you for, I mean, it's got to be at least 10 years, if not more than that.
I had a very, and this is the story that's in my Agape book, Agape.
Okay, we just need to be very quick because we have like a little over a minute.
I had a very profound dark night of the soul, followed by a very big, spontaneous enlightenment. Changed my life, turned my life upside down first, and then changed it, thank God, because I really wasn't a very nice person before it happened. And that's what happened, and when I just woke up the next morning and knew. I don't know how I know, Rita. I can see the hologram. I don't know how to describe it. It just happened. I don't know how. I wasn't a seeker. It just happened.
But that's really cool.
Just happened. It is and it isn't. My kids had to grow up with a mom that they call weird. And I'd say, can't you just please be normal?
No, I have two stepkids, and when I married their dad, they were in elementary school, and they would go, here's my stepmom's webpage. She's a psychic. I lived in Texas, okay? And, you know, like, all the kids knew me. It was funky.
Yeah.
So I hear you. Well, Eva, I know the music's going to come up here in a second, so thank you so much for coming on and sharing about your book, Consciousness, Bridging the Gap Between Conventional Science and the New Super Science of Quantum Mechanics. Whew, that was
Thank you for having me, Rita.
And I hope you feel better.
Thank you. Good night.
All right. I will talk to you later. That's Eva Herr. Her website is evaherr.com. Her book, again, is Consciousness, Bridging the Gap Between Conventional Science and the New Super Science of Quantum Mechanics. We'll be back with Tracy Brown to talk about love yourself and love others right after these words from our sponsors.
Just Energy Radio with your host, Dr. Rita Louise, will return right after these messages.